Harris, and this is my persuasive speech, and here's my audience. I have one member, and then I have two on FaceTime. Okay, so I'm doing my persuasive speech over how Jesus is the Son of God. And to start us off, I have a verse from Mark. It's in chapter 14, verses 61 through 62. And it says, "But he remained silent and made no answer. Again the high priest asked him, 'Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?' And Jesus said, 'I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven.'" My expertise is my faith in God. And in my research, I found Bible verses that refer to Jesus' coming, his purpose, and then the outcome. And then I have my sources. Okay, so I will be explaining how Jesus is the Son of God. The purpose of my speech is to motivate you to understand what the gospel really is. And in order to understand the gospel, or in order to be motivated by the gospel, you have to understand it. So I'm kind of going to help you get a clear view of that. Okay, so on my first point, which is references of the gospel in the Old Testament, I have 3 different verses that I'm going to read that kind of prove to you that, like in the beginning, God had planned for Jesus to come to earth. Like it wasn't just a coincidence that he came down and happened to save us all. So, my first verse I have is Isaiah 7:14, which says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." Which this verse is in Isaiah, which is in the Old Testament, which is before Jesus even came to earth. So he kind of explained to the Jews what was happening, and like that Jesus was going to come down to the earth before it even happened, so they could prepare themselves for Jesus to come. The next verse I have is in Isaiah 53, 3-7, and it says, "He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray, we have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He has oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth, like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth." That verse really kind of explains when Jesus came down, like how the earth reacted to him, because no one was, when he said he was the Son of God and that God sent him down to earth, he was Emmanuel, they were like, no, they didn't believe him at first. So it kind of in the Old Testament, he kind of referred to this verse in particular, and he was like, God told you about me before I even came, and so, here I am, and you guys have warning of this before I was even down here. So I thought that was really cool. Another really awesome reference I found was in Psalm 22. It's actually a reference from the Old Testament to the New Testament, which God had planned out as well, since it had been planned all along. And the verse is Psalm 22:1, and it says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning?" And then, if you turn to Matthew 27:46, let me get this one. It says, "And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So this verse was really awesome. I actually was shown this verse about a year ago in my past youth group. And it basically shows God referencing Jesus dying on the cross in the Old Testament. Of course, they didn't understand it then because it hadn't happened. But when he said that, it was kind of like a message to the Jews that were there watching. It was because they knew the Old Testament, because that's what they were trained to do, growing up. And it was kind of like a reference, like only they knew. Like for us, we would never, like we wouldn't understand it because we weren't trained to know the Bible like by memory and know like the chapters of Psalms and like all of the Old Testament. But the Jews knew that. So when he said that, it was like a message to them, and they kind of got it. And right then they knew, because after that, like the ground had shook and the veil was torn. And so after that, I mean, they knew Jesus was the Son of God. And so, yeah, those references were really cool to me. And then for my next slide, I'm going to talk about Jesus' purpose on earth. So this was while he was here with us. His purpose on earth was to live and show what a sinless life is. He was a man, so he did face everyday temptations, but gave us examples on how to overcome them. I have a verse in Matthew, and it's Matthew 1:21 through 23, which will kind of give us an example of while Jesus was on earth. Okay. It says, "She will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel." This verse basically shows what, like when Jesus came into the earth, and again, it's kind of like a reference from the Old Testament, when it said, and I think it was Isaiah, that Mary would bear a son and call him Emmanuel. So now it's kind of like walking us through it in the present time and showing us like, okay, this is what I planned for. And so after he was born, now I'm going to show you some verses that kind of like help you understand more about his purpose on the earth. So he came on the earth to bear witness to the truth. And a verse I have to support that is John 18:37, which says, "Then Pilate said to him, 'So you are a king?' Jesus answered, 'You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice.'" So when Jesus came to the earth, his purpose was to show us sinners what it was to live a perfect life, or what we should strive to be. Of course, like we're naturally born into sin, and we're naturally going to commit sin, but I think after Jesus came to this earth, he kind of showed us like the relationship we can have with God, and the forgiveness and the grace God gives us. And I feel like before he was on earth, it was all about the rules and the laws of God, about following, the 10 Commandments and making sure that you were abiding in the rules that were in the Bible. But now it's kind of like we have kind of like a second chance, because Jesus came to earth to show us that forgiveness. He died on the cross for our sins so that we could have a chance to have a relationship with God, and to even feel his love, and to know about his love, to learn his love for us. And I feel like in the Old Testament, it wasn't like that. It was strictly about the rules. And so Jesus kind of came to testify and show us that we can have a chance to not abide in all the rules, but actually like learn to love in the way God loves us, I guess. That's what I'm trying to get across. Okay. So my next point, I have the outcome of Jesus' coming. So in this verse is Matthew 28:19 through 20. And it says, okay, Matthew 28:19 through 20, which this is kind of like a summary of the gospel. This is pretty much like after he died on the cross, he said this to his disciples, and this is like pretty much, this is a very popular verse in the Bible, which kind of like describes the gospel. Okay. It says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of age." Okay. Like I said before, Jesus gave his life so that we could have a personal relationship with him. And I feel like in that verse, he's telling us that he's pretty much giving us what we need to do. Like, okay, now that you know me, now that you know my Father, you need to go spread this love, go share this love for all who didn't get to witness it. Go make disciples of all nations, and go baptize them, let them know the Father's love. And I just feel like it's really cool, and that's how we all, like, I don't know, it's just really cool how Jesus got all that information across just through his coming on the earth. So, a cool statistic I found was that 74% of the world believes that Jesus is the Son of God. I feel like there's a difference in believing Jesus is the Son of God and then believing in God, I guess. Because, of course, like, the people who believe in God, they believe there's something above watching over them, something they pray to, something that gives them hope, something they have faith in. Well, I feel like when you believe Jesus is the Son of God, you're believing in the gospel, and you're believing in the relationship with God rather than just having something to rely on, if that makes sense. If you know about the gospel, you get to see like how Jesus came to earth and was an example, and you get to like really understand and read about God's love rather than just believing in a spiritual figure. So I think that's really cool. And then to close us out, I have a quote by Ravi Zacharias, and it says, "Outside of the cross of Jesus Christ, there is no hope in this world. That cross and resurrection at the core of the gospel is the only hope for humanity. Wherever you go, ask God for wisdom on how to get that gospel in, even in the toughest situations of life." And yeah, that's all I have for my speech.